I never thought I'd feel this way about someone I barely know. His name is Marcus, the new security guard in our community, and every time I see him, it's like a small shock runs through me, sharp, urgent, and impossible to ignore. I know it's wrong. I know I shouldn't feel anything at all. I'm married. I love my husband, or at least I think I do. But somewhere along the way, years of routine and neglect left me hollow, empty, lonely. Marcus doesn't flirt. He doesn't try. He simply exists in a way that makes me remember what it feels like to be seen. When he nods at me during my morning walks, or when our hands brush accidentally over a package, it's electric. But brief, fleeting, enough to leave me thinking about it long after. I catch myself imagining moments that will never happen, wondering what it would be like if the rules didn't exist. And yet, every time my mind drifts that far, a knot of fear tightens in my chest. I know what I'm doing. I'm walking along a line I should never approach. The tension, the silence, the closeness we share without intention. It's intoxicating, terrifying, and I can't stop noticing it. I can't stop noticing him. Even now, thinking about it, I feel that same pull, the same quiet, undeniable desire, and the same deep relief that I didn't act. It started with small moments, the kind that seem insignificant until you realize they've taken over your thoughts. I first noticed Marcus properly one morning when I was checking the mail. The sun had just risen, painting our street in soft gold. And there he was, standing by the gate, adjusting his uniform. He didn't smile, at least not in a way that seemed directed at me, but the way he moved, precise and calm, drew my eyes. I felt a flutter in my chest, a heat that startled me because I hadn't felt it in years. I told myself it was nothing, just curiosity, nothing more. But then there was the hand. A simple brush, as he handed me a package from the delivery van. Our fingers touched briefly. Too briefly, really, to mean anything. But it left a shiver in its wake. I almost pulled back immediately, embarrassed by the unexpected intimacy of it. But something stopped me. I watched as he returned to his post, focused, unbothered. And I realized how much I wanted that focus on me, even if it could never be mine. I found myself noticing him more than anyone else. How he greeted the neighbors, always polite, professional, yet somehow warm. How he caught the smallest details, a package out of place, a gate left slightly open, and fixed them without a word. There was a quiet confidence about him that made the walls I'd built around myself tremble. I began rationalizing these feelings, convincing myself that it was admiration, that it was appreciation for a competent person doing their job. But deep down, I knew it was something else. Every encounter became a test of restraint. The way he looked at me for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. The way he smiled politely when our eyes met. Tiny sparks that lit a fire I didn't know how to contain. I would replay the moments later, alone in my kitchen, heart racing, hands trembling as if I had touched something forbidden. I kept reminding myself, I am married. I am not supposed to want this. I am not supposed to imagine anything beyond the polite nods, the brief exchanges. And yet, the more I tried to suppress it, the more my mind clung to him. I'd catch myself watching his back as he walked his rounds, listening to the rhythm of his steps echoing through the quiet street, imagining how it would feel to be noticed the way he notices the world, fully, intensely, without judgment. It was intoxicating, maddening, and terrifying all at once. I knew I was walking a line, but the pool kept me close to it, dangerously close. It was during one of those quiet afternoons that I realized how dangerous this simple act of talking to him could be. I was outside, watering the front garden, when Marcus walked by, clipboard in hand, checking the gates. He paused, just long enough to offer a small smile. "Afternoon, Mrs. Caldwell," he said. Nothing more. No charm, no hint of impropriety, just a greeting. But it lingered, and I found myself smiling back, aware that my pulse had skipped a beat. Later, when he returned a misplaced package I had forgotten on the porch, our hands brushed again. This time, I didn't pull away immediately. Instead, I let the brief contact sit between us, heavy with an unspoken tension that neither of us acknowledged. I wanted to step back, wanted to tell myself I was imagining things, but I couldn't. I wanted him to notice me in that small, fragile way. I wanted that connection, fleeting and forbidden, more than I cared to admit. Over the following days, our encounters became almost ritualistic. A nod here, a polite smile there, and occasional small talk. How the weather was unusually hot, which neighbors were tending their lawns, whether the gate latch had been fixed. Every word was mundane, and yet the silence around the words was loaded with meaning. I found myself analyzing everything: the tone of his voice, the angle of his head when he spoke, the way his eyes lingered on mine for a fraction longer than necessary. I knew I was getting carried away. I knew these moments were dangerous, because the more I felt, the more vulnerable I became. Loneliness has a way of amplifying small gestures into something monumental, and I could feel the walls I had built around my heart starting to crack. It scared me, but it also thrilled me. I hadn't realized how starved I was for attention until someone gave it to me without even trying. And yet, guilt accompanied every heartbeat. I would retreat to my kitchen, cup of tea in hand, telling myself I was ridiculous, that I had no right to feel this way. My husband was a good man, in his own way, but he was distant, preoccupied with work and his routines. I had tried to fill the void myself, distracting my mind with chores, errands, and social niceties. But nothing could replicate the thrill of being truly noticed by someone new, someone alive in a way I had almost forgotten existed. One evening, he held the gate open for me longer than necessary. It was a simple gesture, polite and unremarkable on the surface. But in that moment, it felt like an invitation. I almost lingered. I almost stepped into a line I knew I shouldn't cross. But I didn't. My hands trembled slightly as I whispered a quiet "thank you." And he nodded, unaware of the storm he had stirred in me. Alone later, I could still feel the heat of that brief proximity. My heart raced, my mind spun, and I knew I was teetering dangerously close to something I might never recover from. It happened on a rainy afternoon, the kind where the streets glisten and the world feels smaller, almost intimate. I was locking the gate after taking the trash out when I heard the soft click of Marcus's footsteps behind me. The storm had caught him on his rounds, and without thinking, I looked over my shoulder. He offered a small, understanding smile. "You'll get soaked," he said. It was practical, ordinary, and yet it made my chest tighten in a way I couldn't explain. "I don't mind," I murmured, though the truth was, I did. My hair, my clothes, my carefully constructed composure, all at risk. But part of me wanted him here. wanted to linger in that thin, fragile space where nothing was spoken, but everything was felt. He held the gate open for me, closer than necessary, and I felt the warmth of his presence envelop me. I could hear the soft patter of rain on the driveway, smell the wet asphalt, feel the pulse in my wrists and neck rising. The world had contracted to just the two of us, a private bubble where rules and reason seemed distant. My heart raced, every nerve ending alive, aware of a connection that was forbidden yet thrilling. I tried to focus on anything else, the rain, the errant leaves, the faint hum of the neighborhood, but my mind kept returning to him, to the subtle curve of his smile, the calm steadiness in his voice, the way his hand lingered just slightly on the gate. My imagination spun scenarios I would never act on, the smallest touch magnified into something monumental. Every rational thought fought for control, reminding me who I was, what I had, the lines I must never cross. And yet, desire is not something easily tamed. I felt a longing so vivid, so immediate, that I feared my restraint would falter. The quiet tension between us stretched taut, a wire ready to snap. I could have leaned in and said something reckless, moved closer under the guise of sheltering from the rain. But I didn't. I inhaled sharply, letting the moment stretch just enough to savor, and just enough to stop myself. When I finally stepped back, closing the gate behind me, a shiver of relief ran through me. Relief that I hadn't given in. Relief that the line was still intact. Relief mixed with the ache of what might have been. Alone in the house later, the memory lingered. His proximity, the weight of unspoken tension, the electricity of a brush that never turned into contact. I felt alive and guilty all at once, my mind racing yet empty, flooded with a single haunting thought. The world had almost tilted, almost shifted into a place I wasn't ready to inhabit. It was intoxicating, yes, but also terrifying. I understood, in that moment, how fragile self-control can be when desire collides with loneliness. I had glimpsed something I wasn't meant to touch, and though I had turned away, the memory burned into me, a quiet, unyielding reminder of temptation, of restraint, and of the line I would never cross. It was late one evening when everything almost fell apart. A sudden storm had knocked out the power in the neighborhood, leaving my house bathed in shadows and the faint flicker of my phone's flashlight. I stepped outside to check the gate, and there he was, Marcus, making his rounds, umbrella in hand, rain dripping off the brim. The sight of him, in that quiet, isolated moment, made my chest tighten in a way I hadn't expected. "Everything okay, Mrs. Caldwell?" he asked, voice low and steady, carrying the calm reassurance I hadn't realized I craved. The rain made the world feel suspended, every drop amplified, every sound sharper. I nodded, trying to sound casual, but my hands shook slightly as I held the gate. He stepped closer to inspect the latch, and for a heartbeat, our proximity became a private world. I could feel the warmth radiating off him, smell the faint scent of rain on his uniform, notice every subtle movement, how he shifted his weight, how his eyes lingered on mine a second longer than necessary. My mind spun. Every rational thought shouted for me to step back, to retreat inside, to remind myself of my marriage, of my life, of the line I could never cross. But desire is a cunning thing. It lingers in the silence, it grows in the pauses, and it thrives in moments like this. He extended a hand to steady the gate, and for an instant our fingers brushed. I froze, acutely aware of the heat that ran through me, of the forbidden electricity in that simple touch. I could have leaned into him, said something that might have shattered everything, but I didn't. I couldn't. The knot in my chest tightened as I stepped back, the weight of restraint heavier than I had imagined. For a few long moments, we simply stood there, rain pouring down, silence stretching between us. Every instinct told me to linger, to explore what it would feel like if the rules didn't exist. Every memory of my husband, every thought of loyalty, every awareness of consequences told me to step away. I swallowed hard, my body taut with tension, my mind spinning in dizzying contradictions. Finally, I moved, letting the gate click behind me, retreating into the safety of my house. Alone, I collapsed against the doorframe, trembling, not from the cold, not from the rain, but from the intensity of what had almost happened. The memory of his proximity, his attention, the unspoken possibilities, it burned in my mind. I was shaken, exhilarated, terrified. And yet, above all, I felt relief. Relief that I had stopped myself. Relief that the line, though blurred and trembling, still existed. That night, lying awake in my darkened bedroom, I realized something I hadn't faced before. Desire can be sharp, immediate, and intoxicating, but restraint is its own kind of power. I had glimpsed something I wasn't meant to touch, and though I had almost succumbed, I hadn't. And that, I thought with a mixture of fear and awe, might be the only thing keeping me whole. The days that followed felt strangely suspended. Marcus continued his rounds as usual, polite, professional, unaware of the storm he had stirred in me. And I, for my part, carried the memory of that night like a secret wound, sharp, insistent, impossible to ignore. Every time I saw him, every time our eyes met, I felt a small, private flutter, a reminder of how close I had come to losing myself in something I knew I couldn't have. I found myself analyzing my own reactions, how my chest tightened when he smiled, how my thoughts spiraled when our hands accidentally brushed, how even mundane interactions carried a weight I couldn't explain. Loneliness had made me vulnerable, yes, but it had also awakened something I had almost forgotten. A craving to feel noticed, to feel alive, to feel like I matter to someone outside the predictable boundaries of my life. Marcus wasn't the danger. I was. The parts of me that hungered, that imagined, that teetered on temptation with almost reckless abandon. And yet, there was relief in the restraint. Knowing I had stopped myself, that I had not crossed the line, made me feel both stronger and painfully aware of my own fragility. Desire is not something easily erased, and I could feel its echo lingering in quiet moments, in the way I paused at the gate, in the way I replayed his smile, in the way I imagined conversations that would never happen. It was a private tension, one I had no intention of sharing with anyone, but one that reshaped my understanding of myself. I began to notice other things too. How my marriage had dulled me, how neglect can quietly erode intimacy, how even a brief, fleeting connection can feel more vivid than years of routine. Marcus became a mirror, showing me what I lacked, what I craved, and what I was capable of feeling when the world fell away. And every time I remembered that night in the rain, I felt that dangerous mixture of longing and fear. The knowledge that I had touched something forbidden without letting it consume me. It's been weeks since then, but I still catch myself in quiet moments wondering what it would have been like if I had given in, if I had stepped just a little closer. The answer terrifies me, and yet it fascinates me. Marcus remains in my life, and every glance, every polite smile, every brief conversation carries the same electric tension as that night. I am grateful. I am guilty. I am alive. I am reminded with every heartbeat that desire can be restrained, but never fully silenced. And sometimes the near miss leaves a mark deeper than anything you ever expected. Looking back, I realize that night in the rain changed something in me. I came dangerously close to stepping over a line I could never return from. Yet, I didn't. The tension, the longing, the forbidden electricity. It all lingers in quiet moments, reminding me of what desire feels like and how fragile restraint can be. I learned that being seen, truly seen, can awaken emotions you thought were long buried, and that temptation is as much about the mind as it is about proximity. I still think of Marcus sometimes, but I know the line I cannot cross. And in that knowledge, I find a strange mixture of relief and fascination. Have you ever been this close to crossing a line? Share your experiences in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe for more stories that linger in the spaces between desire and restraint.